everyone. Pierre Poilievre here. There's just an emergency here in Parliament Hill. The Liberals have just announced that they're shutting down debate. They're censoring debate on their censorship bill. We just got the notice right now. As you know, they've been trying to censor the internet in what Canadian artist Margaret Atwood is called creeping totalitarianism. So give Trudeau's woke bureaucrats over at the CRTC the power to control what you see and say on the internet. I'm just rushing into the House of Commons lobby right now. Conservatives are the only party fighting back. But as you can see, this closure is now being brought right before us right now. You see right here, Online Streaming Act. They're bringing in what's called closure, which shuts down debate and rams the bill through in record time. Only Conservatives are fighting back against this censorship bill. We believe you should have the freedom to decide what you see and say online, but I need you to immediately sign my freedom of speech petition. The link is right before you. Click, sign.
Canadians are being told the economy is resilient, but their grocery bills, rent, and debt payments tell a very different story, guys. Food prices are rising, housing is still unaffordable, and interest rates are stuck even as institutions insist things are stabilizing. Today's three stories show the same pattern repeating across different parts of the economy. We have costs rising, supplies are tightening, and institutions are delaying action. And as always, the Canadian citizens are the ones that are absorbing the damage. Everything is always put back on the everyday person. So before we get into any of the headlines, I want to ask three simple questions for each story always. What does this screw up for a normal person? Which institution has failed us? And who is benefiting from the delay or all of the confusion?
This is Canada. Maple syrup and like Captain say, ay, kick your ass all hockey season, ay, Mounties be riding horses, yeah, this is Canada.
Hello, everybody. Today is Friday, December 12th. My name is Miloš Krajčnik. I'm going to be covering a couple of stories here. And the first headline is beef prices are soaring. Here's why Canada is facing record low cattle numbers. And I know everybody loves beef. Beef is the best. We all know now that the stories that we heard as children, don't eat red meat, it's bad for you. That's all a lie. Red meat is amazingly healthy for you. Beef is extremely high in iron and protein. Pound for pound, has the highest concentrations of both. Everything you really need to live a healthy life is literally in beef. Anyways, to get into the story, if there's a small bit of positive news for those who love to grill a steak in the summer or enjoy a roast dinner during the chilly winter months, beef prices are expected to climb even further in 2026, but not by as much as recent years. So yay, we're getting a price increase, but it's not as bad, guys. We're only going to pay a little bit more. Yay. Bad news is it's not going down. Beef prices are at record highs after climbing 16% over the last year and end up 35% in October compared with the 5-year average. So that's actually ridiculous. The retail price of beef is expected to creep up again next year. And so what the solution that the Carney government, that the Liberals have implemented is, everybody knows the big story about lab-grown meat, right? And how they're not going to declare what's being sold in supermarkets, whether it's lab-grown or whether it's a natural beef steak. So this is what we're really getting here, guys. This is what we're really getting. Look at these beautiful animals. This is what we're getting. We're just getting more BS from the government, more political posturing, more padded pockets. They're padding their own pockets. They're going to increase prices for everybody, but because they're padding their own pockets with federal government funds through these stupid initiatives, green initiatives, carbon taxes, and all of that, they're going to be always eating natural meat, right? And so what this story really gets into is, and we've seen all of this, right? So beef prices are at record highs and they're still climbing. This isn't temporary inflation. Canada has the lowest cattle numbers in decades, and ranchers are selling off herds and they're not rebuilding them. And it's not because they don't want to. It's because the risk has become way too high. And everybody that I know that's a farmer doesn't want to stop being a farmer. The only reason why people actually exit out of this is because they're basically forced out of it. And what's happened in recent years is we have a drought that drove up feed costs. We have energy and fertilizer costs went through the roof. And that's very funny. Energy and fertilizer costs have gone through the roof. Meanwhile, Canada is an energy-rich nation. And we have some of the lowest energy in the world, and we have some of the highest quality fertilizer in the world. And we have the most potash fertilizer for export in the world. But our energy and our fertilizer costs are going through the roof for our own food, for our own food supply. Guys, I want to hit this point home quite a bit. Food is a strategic resource. It is a strategic resource in nations and countries that have an abundance of food. They take it for granted. They take it for granted. Arab nations, the UAE, Saudi Arabia, they go around Europe buying plots of land wherever they can, and quite literally buying up plots of land so that they can have their own agriculture, and they just export everything from the country that has sold them basically public land. They build up these orchards and all of that, and they just send all of the fruits, all of those vegetables back home. That's what they do because they don't have food. Because they don't have, if you put a blockade on an Arab country, they quite literally starve. We've taken this for granted, and our food costs, which should be extremely low, some of the lowest in the world, are very high. And succession is failing here. The older ranchers are cashing out. And the younger ones, they can't afford to take over. And this is the problem. They want to, but they can't afford it because our government's failing. And so what's this screwing up for normal Canadians? We have higher grocery bills that aren't coming down. We're getting less protein in our diets because meat is just more expensive and it's worse food quality overall. So we have to go to these, we're basically forced to buy lower quality meat and lower quality food in general because we can't afford the good stuff, even though we should be able to. And the people that really can't afford food, the food banks are really under pressure because what are they going to feed starving people if beef and all other meats are increasing in price? And so the institutions that are systematically failing us is the federal agriculture policy has generally failed to stabilize production. Our energy and input cost policy made farming far riskier, and our rural and succession policy failed to keep producers in the system. We're systematically pushing farmers out, guys, and it's all the government's fault. Who's really going to benefit from this? It's only large global processors and traders. This is why they want to sell us lab-grown meat, because why would we want to subsidize farming, cows, all of that production, that whole supply chain? Why would we do that when we can just have someone in a lab just implanting cells and growing a steak and selling it that way? Canada didn't run out of cows, guys. We made it harder for us to raise them. So this next story, more rentals are sitting empty in Canada, but it's not enough to relieve housing affordability, CMHC says. Canada's rental market is softening, but not nearly enough to make housing feel affordable for many tenants, according to the Canada Mortgage and Housing Corporation. The national vacancy rate for purpose-built rentals has jumped to more than 3% in 2025 compared to 1.5% just 2 years prior, according to the report released on Thursday. CMHC said that while rent prices continue trending upwards overall, often among larger, more livable units, the pace of increases has slowed even as landlords dangle more incentives. And this is just giving some national statistics. Let's look at this graph here. And this is really a shame, guys, because there are so many systematic failures with our housing crisis that we're going through, right? The CMHC says rental vacancies are rising across Canada. In theory, you know, basic economics should say the more supply, the lower the price, right? Because you're going to want to try and increase demand by lowering prices, right? So if we have more vacancies, rents should be lower to fill in the gaps, right? In reality, what we're seeing is rents are still rising and affordability hasn't improved. Who's crazy here? What's going on? The new supply that's actually coming is mostly small. It's not that great. And it's investor focused units. So it's these smaller units. It's, you know, it's 1 bedroom with a den type of thing. There's 2 bedroom and family sized units remain very scarce, right? And young Canadians are delaying moving out, and it's not because rent is cheap, but because they can't afford independence. It just, you can't afford to live alone for the most part. Pay rent, pay groceries and all of that. Have a car, pay insurance. It's sad because the Canadian dream is kind of built on that you can have a regular Joe job, a trade job, and that you could live alone, you could save money and have a good life. That life doesn't seem to exist anymore. And what this screws up for Canadians is our rents are staying high even when the market is softening, right? And families and roommates are stuck overcrowding. They can't leave. They have to live communally like this. And obviously young adults are forced to delay these milestones like moving out or starting families. And that's, starting families is probably one of the biggest tragedies that are happening in Canada, is that we're not able to start these families because everything is too expensive for us. Who's failing us? The CMHC and the federal housing policy has focused on unit counts, not livability. Our immigration policy and population policy have completely overshot housing capacity. And it's not the immigrants' fault. It's not people who are coming here who are to blame. It is quite literally the liberal bureaucrats. It is quite literally their fault for all of this. And the zoning and approvals remain completely untouched. And I actually want to show a quick snippet video here for you guys that's going to tie into this perfectly. Here's our good old boy, Stephen Harper.
Said we will not do. You know, these guys would have had in the last 2 weeks us throwing open our borders and literally hundreds of thousands of people coming without any kind of security check or documentation.
And that's
some other
not true, Mr. Harper.
That would have been an enormous mistake.
See,
we're following a balanced approach. We're bringing more refugees.
Fears all the time.
Fears
of others, fears of different communities.
And
we have a prime minister who prefers to pander to fears.
Let's go to Mr. Mulcair.
That's it, guys. That's what happened. We let blackface win. We let him ruin our country with insane immigration policies that he brought in, pandering to I don't really know who, but this is what happened. And this is where all of this started. We've had over a decade of terrible immigration policies. Our housing crisis was literally created by that idiot, not Stephen Harper, but blackface Justin Trudeau. And we are living through the crisis that he created. How are we going to fix it? I don't really know because Carney doesn't really seem to be wanting to fix it either. I'm going to move on to the next story here. It's the Bank of Canada holds key interest rate at 2.25%, saying economy has proved resilient. And the Bank of Canada governor here, Tiff McClem, he actually has a video down here that I'm going to play.
I mean, considering that we have tariffs and we have uncertainty about USMCA, why is this resilience coming from? Where is this resilience coming from?
Look, it's a good question, and it's going to be hard to give you a super precise answer, but I think there's a few things I would point to. First of all, as I mentioned in the opening statement, there were broad-based revisions to the national accounts covering the last 3 years, 22, 23, 24. And, what you saw there is that, demand was stronger, consumer spending was stronger. But the other thing you saw is that business investment was stronger, and productivity growth, while still weak, went from 0 to about 0.5. So, both demand and supply were stronger. So as we came into this year, the economy was healthier than was previously reported, and that may be.
We found a couple places to sell some extra things, yay, but productivity remains low, so we're out of the clear, right? Productivity isn't that big of a deal, guys. This is embarrassing. They're systematically lying to us.
Explaining some of the resilience we're seeing in the more recent data. The second thing I would point to is that we have very steep tariffs on some key sectors in our economy: steel, aluminum, autos, lumber. But for the rest,
none of that would be a problem if we had a domestic industry that could support the supply that we can provide. But the industry that the market that we relied on to support our industry is a foreign market. Doesn't matter how big of an ally the US is, it's a foreign state. Doesn't matter how big of a trading partner, an ally, we should be that big of an ally and that big of a trading partner, but we should still always build our own domestic industry. And we haven't, ever. It literally fell off after like the 60s.
To the economy, it continues to operate largely tariff-free with the United States. If you're compliant with CUSMA, outside of those sectors, you're still operating under the Canada-U.S.-Mexico trade agreement. So, I mean, Canada's actually, as significant as these tariffs are, Canada's average, the average tariff rate on Canada from the United States is one of the lowest in the world, about 6%. So, and what you're seeing is, those sectors have been hit hard, but we haven't seen big spillovers to the rest of the economy. We're seeing some, so overall, the rest of the economy is showing.
The rest of the economy, the service sector side of the economy, that hasn't been hit, guys. Yay. But where it matters, where we can add actual value to our own economy, that's really nothing, right? So the Bank of Canada is holding the rates at 2.25%. He's saying that the economy is resilient. Inflation is near target. GDP surprised slightly higher, and unemployment ticked down. Again, unemployment ticked down because of part-time work. Consumer spending is flat though. Investment is extremely weak, and households are still stretched. So how is the Canadian economy strong? The Bank of Canada is openly admitting that Canadians are feeling squeezed. And it's still insisting that prices shouldn't fall because it might hurt growth. Guys, growth comes from you having a value-add economy. Everybody that has a business understands this. The only way your business can grow is if you're adding some kind of value to the market. That's why software businesses grow, because they sell B2B, and the businesses that they sell to find value in what their software business is doing. Aluminum, steel production, the value they bring is it's a final product. You're going to sell it to some kind of machine building, right? A plane, a car, it doesn't really matter. This is where we're falling flat. We don't have that value add in our supply chain. And so households are constantly stuck paying elevated prices indefinitely. And it always translates back to the citizenry, right? It's always us fitting the bill for these politicians. It's always us. And what this screws up for normal Canadians, I think, is extremely obvious. There's not going to be any relief on debt costs. There's no relief on groceries or rent. And wages are lagging while prices are locking in. They haven't even mentioned taking out like carbon taxes and none of that ESG garbage that blackface Justin brought in, increasing, just decimating people's paychecks for no reason. Who's really failing us here? The Bank of Canada is prioritizing macro optics over household reality. And this is always the case. We're always prioritizing theatrics, political theatrics, theater, over real politic. The monetary policy is being used to manage averages and not living conditions. And who's benefiting? The government's avoiding recession headlines, guys. We're not in a good spot. But it's asset holders who are protected from price protection. So they're protecting their own people who have systematically bought up assets, and they're not letting those assets fall. If we're gonna hold these institutions stable, it's us that are fitting the bill. So what does this story really mean? What do all of these stories really mean for Canadians when we look at them together? In food, housing, money, the same pattern is repeating. We have production shrinks, costs are rising, and the institutions are moving way too slow, or like not at all. When the system fails, Canadians have to adjust downward. It's not policymakers. So our ranchers are exiting instead of expanding. What are we going to eat? Where are we going to import this food from? Renters are compromising instead of moving ahead. I personally know a lot of people that have downgraded. They've downsized their homes over the last couple of years. They couldn't afford it. They have families. There's a family of 5. They have to downsize. Families are delaying spending instead of getting relief. How are we going to go Christmas shopping? What's Christmas shopping going to look like this year? This isn't bad luck or a temporary disruption. It's what happens when policy makes production risky, housing is misaligned, and monetary relief is off limits. Canadians are being asked to accept less, pay more, and trust the system is working. Guys, if this is resilience, I don't know. It's not resilience for the people paying the bills. That's all I have to say. Thanks for watching today's episode. Please make sure to like, share, and subscribe. My name is Miloš Krajčnik. Stay informed, stay curious, and God bless Canada.